Hi everyone and welcome to English for You. I'm Pat.
I'm Nikki.
And today we're getting into some pretty heavy science articles. We're going to look at how scientists are creating vanilla flavor from plastic bottles. Interesting idea. Is vanilla a flavor you quite like?
Not really.
No?
I like chocolate. I prefer chocolate.
So, like ice cream, you'd go with chocolate ice cream, not vanilla.
What about you?
Yeah, I like vanilla as a flavor. It's fine in ice cream, but vanilla, like latte, vanilla coffee flavors, I really do like.
I like vanilla candles.
Okay, yeah, the smell's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you like the smell, but not so much the taste.
Exactly.
I quite like the taste, especially as a coffee kind of flavor. Okay. Would you drink it if you knew it was from a plastic bottle? If they said this is a plastic bottle that's been made into vanilla?
I would still probably gonna drink it.
Okay, you'd be okay with it. Me too. I'd be fine with it. But let's find out how the scientists do this and where this idea has come from by reading through our article.
Reading.
Scientists create vanilla flavoring from plastic bottles. Plastic bottle waste is a huge problem. It's the second most common type of plastic waste in the oceans, behind plastic bags. To make things worse, very few plastic bottles are recycled, only around 14% of the global total. Luckily, scientists have found a way to help. They've created a special enzyme that creates vanilla flavoring. Scientists found some enzymes that eat plastic several years ago. They break down some types of plastic into a chemical called terephthalic acid, TA. However, TA by itself isn't particularly useful. Now, though, other scientists have put different enzymes into E. Coli, which is a type of bacteria. These enzymes turn the TA into vanillin, the flavor chemical in vanilla. In their tests, the scientists turned 79% of the TA into vanillin. The scientists' next goal is to make the reaction work on larger amounts of plastic. It's hoped that we'll soon make more discoveries that can turn more of our waste into something valuable.
So the article starts by introducing the problem that we're trying to solve. It says, plastic bottle waste is a huge problem. So yeah, it shouldn't be because you should be able to recycle it, but it is a problem. And the problem is with a lot of different kinds of plastic, particularly bottles, but there are more, as we'll find out. Plastic can be used as a noun or an adjective, like a modifier. We can say it's made of plastic, or we can say a plastic bag when it's more like a modifier. And plastic is something that's been made by people. It's a polymer, which I'll go back to and explain a bit again later, but a polymer, it means it's made up of multiple small, like building blocks. Plastic is, of course, useful in many ways. We make a lot of stuff out of it, but it is bad for the environment because it takes a long time to break down, and we do often need to use certain types of oil to make it. So here's an example of how we're trying to stop this problem using plastic. Many shops in Taiwan no longer give people plastic bags or straws.
今天课文一开始就告诉我们，废弃塑胶保特瓶是一个很大的问题。Plastic 是形容词，也是一个名词，指的就是塑胶制的，或者是塑胶本身，像是 plastic bags、plastic straws， 或者是任何的 plastic utensils， 这些东西都是不环保的餐具。那像是 plastic surgery， 指的就是整形手术，和真的塑胶比较没有关系。那例句说，现在台湾很多商店都已经不提供塑胶餐具了。
Right, so plastic bottle waste is a huge problem. We're now going to give a few facts to explain how much of a problem it is. The article says it's the second most common type of plastic waste in the oceans behind plastic bags. So that's saying plastic bags is like the number one problem in the oceans, but bottles are second behind it.
a lot of plastic things. And the article says, to make things worse, very few plastic bottles are recycled, only around 14% of the global total.
Right, and that really is kind of stupid because we know how to recycle plastic. We have the technology, but it just doesn't seem to happen as much as it should. 14% is a really low number. That's not very good at all. And we also saw this phrase, to make things worse. Another similar phrase would be to make matters worse. And we use this phrase to introduce a further problem, usually a worse problem, after a first problem has been introduced. So we're saying, here's a bad thing, and here's an even worse thing.
所以说海洋里面的废弃物第一名就是塑胶袋，再来呢就是我们提到的塑胶保特瓶。To make things worse 意思就是更糟的事。那也就是说，可能我刚刚已经讲了一个很糟的事情了，你以为已经没了吗？错，还有更糟的。所以我们会用这样的片语来介绍一个更糟的事情。
Right, and it's worse because people aren't recycling enough. To recycle means to kind of use a process on certain materials so you can make them into new things. We can recycle plastic, paper, cardboard, metal, glass. We kind of, rather than reuse them, which means keep it in the same shape and just use it again, we sort of break it all down into its basic parts and then build it up again into a new thing.Recycle
是动词，指的就是回收再利用，像是纸类或者是塑胶保特瓶，这些都是可以回收，被拿去做更多东西的。Pat, I don't know if you've seen those rolls made with shiny glasses.
A few, yeah.
Those are a good example of recycling that we can see in our everyday lives.
Right, and Taiwan has, when the garbage truck comes around, it always has the different recycling bags that you put your paper and your plastic and your other stuff in, so it does get done, but we need to do better.But we're finding other ways. The article says, luckily, scientists have found a way to help, in particular with this plastic bottle problem. A scientist is a person who either studies science, maybe at university, or they work in the science field, the scientific field, for a company, for a university, something like that. A drug company will have scientists to do the actual work of creating their drugs. Scientists at university will study everything from like physics and space to microorganisms, bacteria, that sort of thing. It's scientists who created our COVID vaccines, an example. Here's a kind of more fun example. The scientists in the movie created a huge monster that ended up killing them.
Scientist 是名词，代表的就是科学家。那有很多研究类型都可以算是科学，像是我们在学校会上到的物理、化学和生物，或是其他利用理论、实验验证的东西，也都可以算是一种科学。那 scientist 就是在做这些研究的人。Pat,Do you know that linguistics, 语言学 is also a kind of science?
It does make sense, yes.
Because it's a science of language.
Right. Science is all about kind of rules and patterns, whereas an art is kind of more about interpretation and how you feel about it.
It's more abstract.
Exactly. So what have scientists done? We see in the article they've created a special enzyme that creates vanilla flavoring.So an enzyme is something I spent many years studying back when I was at university. Enzymes are a type of protein, and they act to either break bonds between elements or make bonds between elements. Enzymes are like the little workers in our body cells that do things like break down food and create energy. And enzymes generally work like a lock.With a key, only one thing fits into a single enzyme, and an enzyme will only do one job, like break the H2O in water into H and O, something like that.
Enzyme 是名词，指的就是酶，也就是酵素。它可以催化化学反应，促使东西分解，像是我们唾液中的酶 the enzyme in our saliva, 它就有分解食物的功能。
Right, we've got enzymes all throughout our cells and bodies, all of them doing these jobs. But you can build them, you can create them by yourself. And that's one of the cool things about science. And this one creates a kind of vanilla flavoring. We've mentioned vanilla, of course. By itself, vanilla is a plant that provides a spice, also called vanilla, that's mild, it's kind of sweet, but it has a strong smell.
Vanilla 是名词，意思就是香草或者是香草口味的东西，像是我们常常看到的 vanilla ice cream, or some people like vanilla candles, like me.
So you often see vanilla as these kind of long, dark pods. That's its sort of natural form. But you can also get vanilla flavoring. A flavoring is any substance that's used to give a stronger or more agreeable taste to food and drink. It's to give it a bit of extra taste. If you think of the syrups that people put in coffees to make lattes, like it's got, hazelnut syrup, vanilla syrup, pumpkin spice, that sort of stuff, that is flavoring. So you might say, I'm going to add some strawberry flavoring to this cake.
Flavoring 是名词，意思就是调味品。那 flavor 这个字本身的意思就是味道或者是风味，所以课文这边的意思就是说，这些科学家他们创造了一种酶，而这种酶会产生香草的风味。
So let's look at this process. How do we get this vanilla flavoring, which is perfectly safe, from plastic bottles? Well, we see that scientists found some enzymes that eat plastic several years ago. We don't mention this in the article, but they were discovered in nature. It was in like a garbage waste site in Japan. They found that the plastic was being eaten and there were things that did it.
And the article says they break down some types of plastic into a chemical called terephthalic acid.
Yeah, terephthalic acid. Don't worry about learning that name unless you're going to become a scientist. We can just say TA for short. And TA is this very simple chemical made up of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and it's like the little building block for larger plastics. I said plastics were polymers. TA is what we call a monomer, a single part that goes up like a building block to make a larger thing. Now, the article points out and says, however, TA by itself isn't particularly useful. So this little building block, we can't do much with it. It's not particularly useful. Particularly means very or especially, and it's kind of used to say in a particular or specific way. You kind of use it to give a bit of emphasis, or in the case of a negative, say it's got no real emphasis. So we could say, for example, this piece of work is particularly important, very important. So I'm spending a lot of time on it.
接着课文就告诉我们，这些科学家早在几年前就发现了可以分解塑胶的酶，然后呢，把这些塑胶分解成对苯二甲酸，也就是 TA， 是一种组成聚酯的原料之一。但是呢，这种对苯二甲酸本身并没有特别有用。Particularly 是副词，指的是非常或者是特别的。So when we say not particularly, it means not exactly. 那例句就说这件工作特别重要，所以我花很多时间在这上面。
So this was a few years ago, and it was great. We've got this kind of enzyme that breaks down plastic. Fantastic, gets rid of some plastic. But what do we do with the little tiny building block products? Not sure. Wasn't useful. Now, the article says, now though, other scientists have put different enzymes, so that's different, these kind of little motor things, into E. Coli, which is a type of bacteria. E. coli stands for Escherichia coli. Don't worry again about the big name unless you're going into science. Just call it E. coli. Very common type of bacteria. It is found in humans. There are nasty kinds of E. coli that can cause disease and food poisoning, but there's also good kinds of E. coli that are in our bodies and help us break down food. What's great about E. coli is we know how to grow it quickly and easily in science labs. We also know how to change its DNA, so it's used a great deal in science. So they found this enzyme. They go, okay, it breaks down plastic, great. Now let's put a similar kind of enzyme in E. coli. Let's put it in this bacteria, which we can grow and use. And we see these enzymes, that's the ones in the E. coli, turn the TA into vanillin, the flavor chemical in vanilla. So that's finally making something useful out of this previously useless TA because it turns TA into vanillin. To turn A into B, this phrasal verb simply means change the form of one thing into another thing.
那还有一些科学家，他们把酶放进大肠杆菌里面，然后呢，这些酶就会把刚刚提到的对苯二甲酸变成香草醛，也就是香草的味道。那在这边我们看到一个片语 turn A into B， 指的就是把某一个东西变成另外一个东西，通常指的可能是有经过化学变化的过程。I always said that my mom is turning me into a monster because she's a gym instructor and she forces me to work out with her every day.
Does that turn you into a kind of like extremely athletic person, though?
Exactly.
Great, that's fine. So here we've got turning this useless kind of plastic building block, this TA, into vanillin, which is useful. Because vanillin is a flavor chemical. A flavor chemical it's the chemical in any kind of food that carries that food's particular flavor or smell that we experience when we eat. Every flavor in any kind of food or fruit or spice or anything, it's created by one or more flavor chemicals. And the one that creates that special vanilla taste, vanilla smell, the scientific name for it is vanillin.
Vanillin 就是香草醛，也就是一种化学产物，它会有香草的味道，但是它不是真的香草。那其实在市面上很多我们吃的跟喝的东西都不是真的原料制成所产生的味道，都是经过这些化学所做出来的。
So we see in their tests, the scientists turned 79% of the TA into vanillin, which is pretty good.
That's a lot. And the article says the scientists' next goal is to make the reaction work on larger amounts of plastic.
So, of course, a reaction, when we're talking about science, it's when two or more chemicals are put together and something happens. One or both of the chemicals are changed, or heat is produced, or something just happens as these two chemicals interact and affect and change each other. For example, we could say the reaction between plants, water, and carbon dioxide produces energy for the plants and oxygen for humans to breathe.
Reaction 是名词，在这边的意思比较不一样，指的是化学反应，就是把不同的元素或者是东西加在一起所产生的结果或是反应。那除了当化学反应之外 ，reaction 也可以表示我们平常一般的反应。For example, I thought my joke was pretty funny, but my students' reaction said the opposite.
They were all very cold, weren't they? Okay, so this is really important because vanilla is actually really expensive. We do have ways to create fake vanilla, and that's what we mostly use when we put it in things. But it's definitely expensive. It's hard to get. So finding this way to make a new flavor chemical like this is really handy. And the article says it's hoped that we'll soon make more discoveries that can turn more of our waste into something valuable. So this isn't just clearing up plastic waste and getting rid of it, which is really important. It's actually making something that we can use in our lives, which is fantastic.
It's a win-win.
Yeah, it's valuable. Something that is valuable, we could use this to mean it's worth a lot of money. It's important to people for other reasons, or it could just mean it's very useful. In the case of the article, it's all of them because, as I said, vanilla is worth a lot of money, but it's also a really useful thing for humans to use. So here are a couple of examples. Thieves stole a valuable painting from the museum. It's worth over $1 million. Or we could say, this is valuable information. Thank you for providing it.
Valuable 是形容词，意思是很值钱的或者是很珍贵的。It's priceless. 像是我们在填一些餐厅的问卷等等，在最后填完的时候，可能都会看到他说 We thank you for your valuable feedback or opinion. We look forward to seeing you again. 所以说 valuable 不只是用来形容那些很贵很值钱的东西，也可以用来形容很珍贵或者是宝贵的东西。
Okay, well, that's all for this article. I hope the science hasn't gone too crazy for you guys. If you read our article in the magazine, you'll be able to see some diagrams which make this a bit easier to understand. It's always easier to look at this thing than it is to listen to it. But that's all we've got, and now it's time for our For You Chat question.
For You Chat.
So today's For You Chat question. What other things could we do with used plastic bottles?
Okay, I guess if you're not going to recycle them, which is, I guess, the obvious answer, you can wash them out and just keep using them. If you don't want to buy a more expensive water bottle, but you often go running, just use the same bottle. Wash it out, fill it up, go again. I think people also use plastic bottles to make little plant pots and like hanging gardens.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
For like a vase.
Yeah, you can put a bit of soil in them, that kind of thing. You can cut them in half and you could use them as just like a holder for your pens, pencils, that kind of thing.
Exactly. So if you recycle these plastic bottles, I've seen people make it like a clothes.
Yeah.
Like, clothes or shoes or
the
something like
plastics are broken down again into those little tiny building blocks and then used to create further things. Isn't there also an entire wall made of plastic bottles somewhere in Taipei? It's kind of like an art project, an environmental art project somewhere.
I've never seen it, but I think I heard of it.
Yeah, I thought it was around that sort of Yunshan Park area. It might not be still there. I mean, it might have been years ago and it might have gone since, but I thought there was one there.
I feel like a lot of decoration are used.
Yeah, you could definitely use it for that sort of thing. But I think breaking it down and turning it into clothes and shoes and other things, that would be my favorite choice. But that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for listening, everyone. For English For You, I'm Pat.
I'm Nikki.
We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review. Plastic. We bought plastic cups for our small children so they can't drop and break them. Scientist. The scientist tested a new idea she had by running some experiments. Flavoring. This new kind of Coca-Cola has orange flavoring in it. I love it. Particularly. Dora likes all her classes, but she particularly loves science and Chinese. Reaction. The fire in the factory started with a large chemical reaction. Valuable. The wealthy man owns many valuable things, including several homes and cars.
智慧小补帖
Recycle. Vanilla.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net